plane. The evidence is conclusive. Molin had reacted in the same way before.
When those pilots came forward and told us about the first officer's propensity to overreact on the rudders, that was a eureka moment for us.
But the revelations don't stop there. When questioned at the time, Molin said he had been taught, trained to use the rudder in this way by American Airlines. If this is true, it raises serious concerns for Benzon and the team.
One would assume that if many pilots go through the same training program with some flaws in it, then a lot of pilots have wrong ideas about how to fly an airplane.
With 712 planes in service with American Airlines, Benzon must quickly establish where the truth lies. The airline confirms one of their programs does indeed teach pilots to use the rudder to recover from unusual situations, as seen in this training video.
And if you don't put that rudder in, what's going to happen? When you get to this portion of the roll, she's going to slice out just like that.
Next, Benzon looks at the other tools used to train the pilots, particularly the high-tech flight simulators. Here, pilots are taught to react to a range of emergencies, including wake turbulence. In one of those scenarios, Benzon discovers that the pilots learned to use the rudder very aggressively. The flight simulator program had even been altered to encourage the use of the rudder, particularly when the plane was banking to the right or the left. Airbus themselves had already written to the airline saying this practice was a cause for concern.
The classroom work told pilots that it was permissible to use the rudder to escape from unusual attitude situations. And perhaps more importantly, in the simulator, they were taught to use the rudder very, very aggressively to recover from unusual attitudes.
The finding causes controversy. At a public hearing, American Airlines claimed that Airbus had not explained there were limits to the use of the rudder.
I didn't know you couldn't do that.
You couldn't do what? Sorry.
Be aggressive with the controls.
The airline also claims that the rudder system on the aircraft was very sensitive, and that pilots might not be aware how much rudder they were really applying. The NTSB investigate and discover the rudder control system is highly sensitive. What's more, the controls of the plane become more sensitive as the plane increases speed. On the ground, the rudder pedal has to be depressed by 10 centimeters to get maximum deflection. But when flying at high speed, that distance reduces to just 4 centimeters. NTSB officials are shocked to find that this system is not explained in training manuals.
There was an apparent gap between what the manufacturers knew about the rudder sensitivity of the airplane and what was filtering down to the folks that actually flew them.
Then finally come the results from the analysis of Molin's 5 rudder inputs. They confirm what nobody really wants to believe, that it's indeed possible to tear the tail fin from an aircraft in flight by stamping violently on the foot pedals. Now Benzon and the team can see exactly what happened to Flight 587. Step by step, they have pieced together the key events that led to the tragedy. 5 minutes to disaster. Flight 587 awaits clearance for takeoff.
Taxi in position and hold.
As a Japanese 747 airliner takes off. 30 seconds later, Flight 587 is given a warning of wake turbulence.
The land wind 260 at 1/4 portion of turbulence.
2 minutes to disaster, Flight 587 takes off.
Positive rate, gear up please.
One minute to disaster, 587 encounters turbulence for the first time. Sten Molin flies through it. 30 seconds to disaster, 587 hits a second, larger wave of turbulence. The plane is now banking to the left, reminding Molin of his simulator training.
Rudder movement.
Not realizing how sensitive the rudder system becomes in flight, Molin stamps on the pedal, causing maximum rudder deflection. The plane swings violently to the right, placing enormous loads on the tail fin. Investigators believe that an astonished Molin thinks that the plane is reacting to the wake turbulence. He doesn't realize that his own use of the rudder causes the violent movement. Molin immediately slams the rudder pedal into the opposite position. The plane now swings violently back to the left, placing another enormous load on the tail. Both Molin and States believe the plane is somehow caught in the turbulence.
What the hell are we into? I'm stuck in it! Get out of it!
And in a desperate attempt to get control, Molin applies another rudder input, this time to the right. Now, thoroughly disorientated, Molin again applies full rudder. 587 is now on the brink of disaster. Finally, on the fifth rudder input, all 6 lugs connecting the tail to the fuselage tear apart. The plane is now doomed. Terrified passengers and crew can have no idea what is happening. Huge G-forces rip both engines away. 106 seconds after takeoff, Flight 587 falls from the sky. 265 people are dead. Important lessons have been learned from the tragedy. Airbus have issued a bulletin reminding pilots how to use the rudder, and American Airlines have modified their training program. Together with the NTSB, the aviation industry has moved to ensure that such a terrible accident will never happen again.
You'll be surprised with the things you don't know about Taiwan. And all
After the crash, the Comet did fly again, but it never achieved the commercial success it once promised. In the interim, American company Boeing developed their own passenger jet and became the dominant force in the world of aviation. The de Havilland Aircraft Company went into decline and were eventually taken over. Passenger air travel had changed forever.